If you're currently in flight training or thinking about starting flight training soon, you're going to want to know about these 8 apps. These apps are all either things that I used myself as a student going through private instrument and commercial level training, as well as things that I used once I got into CFI school and now working as an independent flight instructor. These tools, once you learn how to use them properly, can really be beneficial in your training experience. Of course, we never want our devices to be a distraction, especially while flying. That is obviously super critical. They should be only aiding and supporting our flying and not detracting from it. So only use them to the capacity that they are actually helpful to you and not to the point where they are distracting in any way, especially during flight. And if you're a traditionalist and you're not into using an iPad for flying, that's totally fine. This video might just not be for you, but I am here today to make this conversation all about iPads. So let's jump right in. The first one that I recommend is the Sporty's E6B app. This one is a huge time saver compared to using a manual flight computer, but it's also much more accurate. My only caveat here is that if you are a student pilot who is working to become a private pilot, you still need to learn how to use the manual E6B. I know it's probably not like your favorite thing about flying. Flying is probably your favorite thing about flying, but you do have to learn how to use the manual E6B because it's still something that can come up on the written exam or in the check ride, and you just want to be prepared so that the first time you're asked to use it is not in your check ride. As well as on the written exam, you can only take very limited specific materials into the test with you, so a manual E6B is allowed, whereas obviously an iPhone or a tablet is not, because there are so many other things that you could be doing on there other than using the E6B function. So before you dive into the Sporty's E6B and start relying on this too heavily for your flight training, I would recommend learning the manual one. But how you could start using this though in the background is just using it to check your answers. So when you are building out a nav log for a cross-country flight and you're pretty sure you have the right number but you're not super confident, then you can use this digital E6B to double check your answers. Once you are past the private pilot phase and you are a certificated pilot, feel free to use whatever tools you want. No one's really going to care whether or not you know how to use a manual E6B. It's just personal preference at that point. The second app I'm recommending, of course, you knew ForeFlight was going to be on this list. If you have spent any amount of time in flight training, you probably have heard about ForeFlight already, or you are an active user of it. This is one of those apps that is only available on iOS currently, and it is a subscription-based app. I pay for the middle tier annual subscription. I think it's around $120, $130 per year, something like that. It might have gone up a little bit. So ForeFlight is what's called an EFB, or an electronic flight bag. It encompasses all kinds of tools that can be helpful to you as a pilot, whether you're a student pilot or a very advanced pilot. Things like flight planning, traffic radar, weather briefings, weight and balance calculations, airport information, checklists. I could go on and on. It houses so many useful tools and materials. There are also sections of ForeFlight that contain downloadable resources from the FAA. So if you don't want to buy any of your textbooks for flight school, you can access free copies online. And ForeFlight makes it super easy to access these free copies by just loading them into the app. So there are folders you can go into and find exactly what you need. There's also a companion app that your passengers can download, and they can use that to connect to your flight plan and get non-pilot friendly information sent to their own devices. So a lot of times I love to fly with my mom, but she's not a pilot. She's not even a student pilot. So she doesn't know much about flying, but what's fun for her is to have the ForeFlight companion app up, and she can see our ETA, she can see where we are on the map and where we're going. So things like that help keep your passengers engaged as well in the flight, and you're not going to be getting those "are we there yet" questions as often. Personally, how I use ForeFlight now is for flight planning. So I skip the E6B app altogether. The ForeFlight data is calculated for the wind correction, for all those things. In ForeFlight, you can actually file a flight plan. You can open and close a flight plan. I also use ForeFlight during the flight as an active traffic monitoring system. So I connect it to this little device called a Sentry Mini that pulls traffic radar from around me, and I can see where that traffic is and how close to me they are, their altitude, how fast they're flying. I can see that all from the ForeFlight app on my iPad. So not only does it simplify a lot of mandatory tasks, but it also helps reduce my workload, and it gives me a lot more information that helps enhance safety of flight. The third app that I recommend is called Goodnotes. This I recommend specifically for two types of pilots. I recommend Goodnotes for student pilots who are learning a lot, who are going through a lot of ground lessons, who need to take notes and categorize things and keep things organized in a way that they can find and reference their notes later. But I also recommend it for CFIs, especially independent CFIs who are running their own business and operating on their own systems. Goodnotes is just an amazing way to keep record of things, to keep notebooks. I use Goodnotes on an iPad with an Apple Pencil, and it's the best handwriting app that I have found. So it's the most accurate in terms of what my writing actually looks like. When paired with a screen protector on the iPad that is designed for writing, it makes the Apple Pencil feel so smooth, and just it's great. I really, really like it. Also, then those handwritten notes are searchable. I also use Goodnotes to organize files of things like endorsements and student records. If you're a CFI who works for a school, your school likely has internal systems for organization, especially handling student paperwork and things like that. But when it's on you alone as an independent CFI, that is hugely important that you keep great records of everything. So I use Goodnotes to organize all of that and keep the back end of my CFI business really clean. I believe I was preparing to become a commercial pilot, and I started using Goodnotes to keep track of all my notes going through multi-engine training. So I have really detailed notebooks of multi-engine and then all of my CFI training as well. And I referenced those so much throughout my training that I'm just so happy I had them in this digital format so that I could find things more easily. My number 4 app recommendation is the Holding Pattern Trainer. Holds are something that you learn and practice in instrument training specifically. When this app would be most helpful is when you are a private pilot who's preparing to become an instrument rated pilot. We all love holds. Holds are so fun. So to make them even more fun and a little easier and a little less intimidating, the Holding Pattern Trainer app makes it so simple. You can quiz yourself. It will just auto-populate different holds for you to figure out what the entry would be. If you're coming from a certain heading, how would you enter this hold? You can also design a hold in the app and walk through it that way. So that was also really helpful to me when I was becoming a CFII, which is an instructor who teaches instrument. I had to, for the first time, actually create holds to put a student in, and it can be tough sometimes to think on the fly with the direction and the correct entry and then just all the steps that go into that. So being able to design them in the hold pattern app and just kind of drill them really quickly and create new ones on the fly was really helpful. And holds are something that seems so simple on the surface, and then when you start getting into it, it's like, it is simple, but it's not. If you're having trouble getting hold entries into your brain, this will help a lot. The 5th app that I recommend is the FAR-AIM app. So the FAR-AIM is the Federal Aviation Regulations Aeronautical Information Manual. Did I say that correctly? I'm gonna have to double check. I recommend the digital version because every single year the FAA rolls out a brand new version of the FAR-AIM in a giant paper copy. Actually, I have one right here. Let me pull it up. At this point, this is an ancient relic. This is the 2022 version. It's all tabbed up from my private pilot check ride. A few tabs hanging on from that I added for my commercial check ride. But this book is dense. It is not small. It is about maybe a third of the size of my face for reference. And Every single year, the FAA prints a brand new one that everyone is expected to get. Instead of paying $25 to $30 every single year for this giant, heavy paper copy, you can pay $10 one time, get the app, you can load it onto multiple devices. I have it on both my phone and my iPad, and it auto updates every single year. So pay $10 one time and you get the updates in perpetuity as far as I'm aware. The only thing about the FAR/AIM app is that it's not, you have to really know what you're looking for. It's not incredibly searchable. It's a little bit clunky. So if you're someone who is a brand new student pilot, I would invest in at least one paper copy so that you can have it in your check ride. Also, make sure that if you are going to take a paper copy to your check ride, you have to have the current version. A student asked if they could borrow my FAR/AIM, and I said, no, you can't borrow this one because this will get you in trouble. They're not going to want to see 2022 in 2024 or 2025. The great thing though about the paper copy that really helped me was that the act of creating these tabs myself, I didn't buy these. These are handwritten little tabs that I put in here myself, and I went through and highlighted the relevant sections. The act of doing that alone was a great study method for me at the time, and a lot of these tabs I never actually referenced ever again, but the act of creating it did help me get that information into my head. So that's why I still recommend starting with a paper copy so you can figure out where things are and what is most important, and then when you have the digital copy as a backup, it's available for you to reference, but it's not a great primary reference, particularly if you have never read the FAR/AIM before, because this is so dense, this is so much material, you will get lost in the app and you will not be able to find what you're looking for. My number 6 recommendation is an app called LogTen Pro. This is a digital logbook, and honestly, my other caveat here, I've got like a little footnote for almost every single one of these, but my footnote for LogTen Pro is that it is pretty expensive. There are other options that are cheaper or free, and actually ForeFlight even has a digital logbook. So I recommend LogTen Pro for a specific person. Again, I recommend it if you plan to go to the airlines and you need a way to track your hours that can eventually be dissected in the way that the airlines want to see. So there's certain amounts of hours that they need to know about. There's certain types of time they want to see. And LogTen Pro is just the most detailed way to log time that I have found. And then you can total up whatever type of time that you need to see. You can total it up. I was in an aviation cadet program that gave me 2 or 3 free years worth of LogTen Pro. So it was like a no-brainer for me. I get this amazing advanced software for free. So whether you use LogTen Pro or another digital logbook, I do really recommend at least backing up your hours on a digital logbook. I also have a paper logbook that I've had since the beginning of training. I almost said since the beginning of time, but it hasn't been that long. Only been a couple years. I've had a paper logbook ever since I started flying, and that was where I kept all of my hours to start. It wasn't until I was finishing my private pilot training that I did a stage check with a brand new instructor I'd never met before, and he was the one who brought up to me like, hey, you should really think about transferring these hours now while you only have like 40 or 50 hours. You should move those hours now into a digital logbook as a backup plan, because bad things happen to paper logbooks. Sometimes they get lost or stolen or damaged. This little book of paper is inherently very expensive. Every line that you write in there is hard fought and hard won and very costly. So to lose all of that with no other record of it could be very tragic. So other options though, ForeFlight does have a logbook. You could also just do something simple like a Google Sheet or what's it called? The Word version, Excel. You could do an Excel sheet. You could just keep a second logbook, like a second paper logbook. I don't know, but I recommend having a backup of some and not relying solely on one copy or one type of logbook. Diversify your hours a little bit. Recommendation number 7 for top 8 apps that I recommend everyone in flight training should know about is called Flight Radar 24. This one is actually very fun to use whether or not you're a pilot, at least I think, but that's coming from a pilot, so what do I know? And the best thing about this is it's free. The way that I use this in training, or actually I'll tell you what it is first and then I'll tell you how I used it in training, but this is an app where you can see all public traffic at all times. So just any tail number that has not been blocked, you can search for any tail number and see where it is, or you can just pull up the map and watch all the traffic fly around you. How I use this now a lot of times is if a plane flies over my house and I'm like, what is that? Then I'll just pull out Flight Radar 24, look it up really quick. While I was in flight training, I was flying aircraft that had a traffic radar built into the display on the aircraft. I wasn't tracking my flights in ForeFlight at the time. So I would instead use Flight Radar 24 to pull up my flight path after the lesson and see how it went. And you can see the entire track of a past flight. So this is especially helpful for times that I was either working on landings and like trying to count how many laps in the pattern, like did I do 5 or 6 landings, and then go look up and count the laps in the pattern if I forgot. Or if I'm doing something like steep turns, 8s on pylons, things like that, that was really fun to look up and see the track and just know from data points how well this maneuver went. Or because I went to such a big flight school, we would also use it to look up the tail number that we were waiting on. Like, my lesson is supposed to start now and where is this airplane? And we'd look it up and be like, oh, they're still 20 minutes south of the airport, so I can go get a snack. Okay, and my 8th and final app recommendation, it's called Sheppard Air. And actually this one is a little different. So you can't just go search for this app and download it because it won't show up. So this app is actually a companion app for written test prep packages that you buy through sheppardair.com. If you've been around flight training for any length of time, you've probably heard about Sheppard Air. It will save your life potentially. It's unfortunately not available for private pilot tests, but it is available for, I believe, every other possible written test that you would need to take beyond the private pilot level. So it's especially popular for instrument students, but I also used it to help pass my flight instructor exams. I did a quick refresher on the double I, and I also used it to study for the FOIs. The test prep packages are really inexpensive, so they make it accessible for students. Also, sometimes they have partnerships with schools that aren't necessarily made public, and I just found that out because I called them up and had heard a rumor that there was a 10 or 20% discount for students at my school. So I just told them what school I went to and they applied the discount, and it was that easy. So definitely worth a try, especially if you go to a larger flight school. Sheppard Air is such a goofy platform. Although I recommend it, it is best for rote memorization. It is not good for learning the material from the ground up and having a true rooted understanding of the information. So what this test prep software will do is it will run you through a series of ways to practice the actual questions that you'll see on the written exam and help you to basically memorize the answers. This is not a replacement for ground school. This is a tool you can use to help make the prep for the written exam easier and help hopefully increase your score on the written, which then can give you a better experience in your check ride. If you do well in the written, your DPE tends to be happier with you and your check ride oral exam may go smoother. So there's just a lot of good that can snowball out of being well prepared for your written exam. This website, there's just no way around it. It is ugly. And the tool itself is ugly. It's nothing fancy, but it works. You will go to sheppardair.com, you'll call up the phone number, you'll tell them which test you want, and they will send you an email with a code and a way to download the app and all of that. So it's a little bit like secret society feeling, but it's just, yeah, I can't explain it. It just works. Going through the entire system does take a lot of time because they run you through hundreds of test questions multiple times over. But once you get through all of that information, many people score above a 90 with Sheppard Air. So that is my list of top 8 apps. What did you think? Do you have other apps that you would add to the list, or had you heard of these? Do you use these? What do you think? Let me know. For more recommendations on tools to help you in your flight training, you can check out my Amazon storefront. I've listed all of my favorite books for pilots in a section called Pilot Library. I also have a folder called Private Pilot Basics that just has everything you could need to start as a brand new private pilot and more. I've got collections of all my favorite flying gear and things that I recommend. If you liked this video, if you found it helpful, let me know. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any upcoming videos. I put out new videos every Tuesday, and I will see you in the next one.